Hello everyone, welcome to tutorial 6 of LTEC 620. In this tutorial, we're going to prepare to recreate an existing flyer. And as you can see here on my desktop, let me go ahead and open this up. Here is the Aikido flyer that I'm asking you to redesign. What we want to do is begin to set up Affinity Designer so that we can recreate this poster. So let me go ahead and close this. I'm going to switch over to Affinity, and you can see here I have the splash panel that comes up, and I'm just going to click New Document. And I know that this is a flyer that I want to be able to print out on regular letter-sized paper. So I'm going to come to Print, and then they have all of these different sizes in here. And one of them is actually letter, which I'm going to click on right here. And you want to make sure it should automatically change, but if it doesn't, make sure that it is in inches. And we don't need to create an artboard this time. And because we're printing, we should switch to CMYK color format. We haven't talked about color yet. And next thing I want to do is actually change the margins. And I want the margins to be locked in terms of their ratio. And so I'm going to go ahead and put in 1/4 inch as my margin. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Create. And boom, I have my blank canvas that I can begin designing on. Now you'll notice right away that my file isn't named. So what I'm going to do is actually come to File, click Save, and I'm going to save this right on the desktop, and I will just call this tutorial 6. And go ahead and save that. Okay, very good. And now the next thing that I want to do is actually place or import that existing flyer so I can reference it while I'm actually designing. The way I do that is I can just come File and Place. And I select that, and it's going to ask me, what do I want to place? And I have it right here on my desktop, Aikido before, it's the PNG file, and I'm going to click Open. And when you do that, notice that your cursor changes. This is the place icon, and I'm just going to drag and drop something like that. Okay, very good. Now I want to make sure that I switch over to the Move tool, and with this document that I have placed onto my canvas, with it selected, I'm going to come down to the transform panel, and I'm going to set the X and Y value to be 0, 0. And then, of course, I want to scale this up so that it's 8.5 by 11 inches. And when I do that, it should fit quite nicely right on our canvas. Okay, very good. Now, if I look over in my layer section, you can see here, it's named this layer the same thing as the file itself, Aikido before. I'm going to just double click on this and rename it to Original. Very good. And this is nice to have in here. We can toggle the visibility just so that we can reference it when we need it. Okay, and I'm actually going to go ahead and lock that. Now, one of the things that we're going to want to do is view our margins. So let me actually turn off the visibility of the original. I'm going to come up to View, and remember we set the margins to be 1/4 inch or 0.25 inches all the way around. And so this blue line is helping us with that. And if you turn on the visibility of the original, you can see more or less that fits right on there. So what I want to do now is actually make sure that the guides are turned on. In other words, they're showing. We don't have any guides yet, but we're going to want them. And so what I'm going to do with show guides turned on, I'm going to drag and drop a guideline, a horizontal top guideline, just like that. Now, importantly, you'll notice that I have snapping turned on. This magnet is selected, just like that. And that makes it a lot easier for these guidelines to snap right to those margin lines. So I've got one for the top, one for the bottom, and then let's do one for the right. Whoops, I think I went a little too far with that. Let me grab it again, snap it here, and pull this one out and drop it. Great, excellent. Now what I can do, I can shut off my margins, and what I have here are my guidelines, which is going to be very handy. And if I turn this back on and let me toggle off the guides for a minute, you can see that this document actually has a bit of a border. And so let's recreate that border. So what I'm going to do is create a new layer, and I actually want to put it underneath the original. So I'm just going to drag and drop that, and I will just call this recreation. And this is going to be our workspace where we're going to work. And so I am going to hide the original, and I'm going to come back up here and turn on guides, just like that. Now I'm going to select my rectangle tool, and I am just going to drag and drop like this. Excellent. And then I can grab my move tool, and this thing, because I have snapping on, it's going to make it really easy for this thing to just snap right into place. So this rectangle is filling up everything all the way out to those guidelines which correspond to our margins. Now, a couple of things. We don't want to have any fill. So I'm going to come over to fill, and I'm going to select the no fill option right here. And for stroke, I am going to leave it to black, but I'm going to make the width just 1 pixel. Really simple, just like that. And so now if I actually turn off the guides, I can see I have a black rectangle border which goes all the way around my document. And we know that that border corresponds to the margins of our document. So let's actually give this rectangle a meaningful name. I'm going to call it border, so we know what it is. Okay, very good. Let's turn back on our original flyer. And one other important thing that we need to do for this setup is to get this dividing line here on, right, it's more or less down the middle. And so what I want to do is with my guides on, I'm going to come back up here and click show guides. I'm going to drag another guideline out, and I am going to set it right as close as I can right on that gray line. Very good. Now I'll toggle the visibility of the original, and now working in the recreation layer, I am actually going to grab the pen tool. Now up at the top of the pen tool, there are different modes that this pen tool can work in, and I want to use the line mode, which makes it really easy to draw straight lines. And so what I'm going to do is just click right here, and I'm going to come down to the bottom again and click again. Now it's hard to see because our guideline is there, so let's shut our guide off, and let's click our move tool and select something else, and boom, voila, you can see we have that vertical divider line. And if we look in our layers, you can see we have our border layer. Affinity has labeled it a curve, but let's go ahead and call this vertical divider, something like that. Okay, very good. And that's all we're going to do for this tutorial. The goal here was to simply get all set up so that we're ready to design the left column and the right column of this existing flyer. We're out of time for this tutorial. Thanks everyone. I'll see you in Canvas.